Coming up, a new book brings wisdom of the past to help heal body and mind. Today, we remember Sinte Gleska President Lionel Bordeaux. Plus, a California group strengthens fathers and families. I'm Mackenzie Allen Charmley. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines from the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
Arizona State University welcomes 3,500 Indigenous students from Arizona and across the nation. It serves one of the largest populations of Indigenous students among U.S. colleges and universities. We created a sense of place for tribal nations to create futures of their own making through community outreach and research, taught by world-class Indigenous faculty where they see a reflection of themselves and their experiences. Find community at ASU.
This is the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez.
Janangale, we're happy you could join us. Aaliyah is away. I am committed. Those were the words from President Joe Biden at the 2022 White House Tribal Nations Summit. The two-day gathering wrapped up on Thursday in Washington, D.C., with Biden pledging to give Native people a stronger voice in federal matters. He announced a new plan on tribal consultation, asking all relevant federal agencies to get annual training on how to implement tribal consultation.
My administration listened. We heard you, and we're implementing many of the changes you asked for. Today, I signed a new presidential memorandum that improves consultation between the federal government and tribal nations based on key principles. Consultation has to be a two-way, nation-to-nation exchange of information.
Biden also said his administration will allocate $135 million in federal funding to 11 tribal communities who will be relocated because of rising sea levels and climate change. To much applause, Biden also said he is requesting a record $9.1 billion in funding for the Indian Health Service. On the topic of protecting sacred sites and natural resources, Biden said he will work to enter more co-management agreements with tribes. He also promised to make an official presidential visit to Native nations, but failed to say which ones or when. There are a number of Indigenous advocates in Nevada who want to see a new national monument honoring their sacred land. ICT's Sierra Alvarez has the story.
Aviquamet is a 450,000-acre territory in the southern part of Nevada. Now, the federal government is set to make it a national monument, just like other sites, including the Statue of Liberty or Mount St. Helens. In mid-November, officials from the Bureau of Land Management held a public meeting to discuss the topic with local stakeholders. One Indigenous supporter, who is in favor, says giving Aviquamet national monument status would help future generations.
Our DNA, all the other surrounding tribes, our DNA is in the soil. It's in our creation stories and our mythology. We are in support in all the decisions here to protect this land.
Support for the proposed monument is large. This turned out to be important because views of the public are carefully considered in the process. In order for a site to become a national monument, it must meet several criteria, including the Antiquities Act, and it can be done by the administration of a president or by an act of Congress. At this meeting alone, there were an estimated 300 supporters.
Trails that are in this area on both sides of the river, our people shared those trails.
Officials from the Fort Mojave Indian tribe were also on hand for the meeting. The leaders shared more on the spiritual importance of the site to human-speaking tribes, saying it is also known as Spirit Mountain.
And I just want to emphasize to all our Native people here how important our land is, how important to take care of Mother Earth, but more importantly, to express to everybody here how important this sacred mountain is, especially to the Kutan.
In Phoenix, Arizona, Sierra Alvarez, ICT News.
With the expected designation, Aviquamet is set to be Nevada's fourth national monument in the state. In Peru, the colorful Cusco Festival is coming back after a long pause from COVID. Last week, thousands of Peruvians celebrated the 11th anniversary of the United Nations recognition of a prominent ancestral pilgrimage. The event had been suspended for the last 2 years due to COVID-19 restrictions. This celebration blends Catholic and Indigenous beliefs, honoring the area's glacier, which is considered sacred to Native people in the region. Dancers wore traditional attire, including some made from animal skin and tree bark, and participants danced for more than 10 hours.
We are celebrating one more year of UNESCO's recognition of a festival of the Lord of the Snow Star, which we carry out between the months of May or June, depending on when it falls on the calendar year.
The National Glacier Research Institute indicated that 750,000 square miles of the Andean glacier has been lost due to rising temperatures. And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. On this weekend edition of the ICT Newscast, we feature interviews that celebrate Indigenous people who make a difference in people's lives. Cheryl Crazy Bull, President and CEO of the American Indian College Fund, pays tribute to Lionel Bordeaux, who died earlier this month. Bordeaux was the president of the Sinte Gleska University in South Dakota. Aaliyah Chavez has more.
Welcome back, Cheryl.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here with you and honored to be able to speak about President Bordeaux's legacy.
Let's just jump right in here because he was known as the dean of the tribal college movement. And he was actually, for a number of years, your boss at Sinte Gleska. So tell us about your time there and the time that you got to share with him.
Thank you. So that's my home reservation, the Rosewood Reservation in South Dakota. Sinte Gleska University was established in 1971. Lionel came on as president in 1973. I started working there in 1981. So I had over 40 years of him being a good relative and mentor. Sinte Gleska University, under his leadership, is a flagship institution of the tribal college movement. Evidence really of the sovereignty of tribes because they have that authority to establish their own higher education institutions. Under his leadership, the focus of our Lakota Studies program was not just on offering independent courses, but also integrating Lakota knowledge throughout the curriculum. Sinte became the first bachelor's degree granting tribal college under his leadership and the first master's degree granting tribal college under his leadership. So I think he left a really powerful legacy there, as well as touching the whole tribal college and tribal sovereignty movement across the country.
Can you maybe describe how groundbreaking it was to have an institution like Sinte Gleska at the time and to also have all of these core values of education that you're describing?
Yeah, I think that many people don't realize just how revolutionary it is to be a tribe that establishes its own tribal higher education institution. President Bordeaux believed that, education touched everything. It touches all aspects of our life, from our infrastructure to our health, just the well-being of our communities. And he was able really through his, perseverance and his compassion, his sort of, if it is to be, it is up to me. We're all in this together attitude. He was able to really ground the tribal college movement in tribal sovereignty. And I think at Sinte, that's just an example, actually, of an institution that really honors what it means to be tribally controlled and to support the priorities and the needs and just the wellness of our tribal communities.
Maybe reflect on the high points of what a tribal college or university brings to a reservation and to tribal lands and communities.
Yeah, a few things that I learned, I think, but, I grew up on the reservation. And so I think that we grow up in the cultural practices and knowledge of our people. But what a tribal college does, and I think by extension, other tribal education institutions and environments, what they've done for us is mediate our cultural knowledge and mediate our cultural identity because it had been torn away from us. And we needed to have institutions that could bring cultural practice and cultural knowledge to the forefront because so much of that had been lost for many of our people, not all of our people, of course, but for many. And I think under Lionel's leadership and the leadership of others in the tribal college movement, that's basically what they did, right? They took action that used modern institutions and modern strategies to, we like to say, save the lives of Indigenous peoples, to transform the experiences so we didn't have to have a bad educational experience. We could have one where our identities and who we are as a people are honored and celebrated and taught. I think that is, the heart really of the tribal colleges. I think a couple, just in appreciation of President Bordeaux's legacy also, I need to mention the things that he had a lifelong commitment to. Tribal accreditation. He always felt that the Western accreditation experience that all of our institutions are required to go through in order to participate, like with federal financial aid. And so he felt like we should do that for ourselves. And that was real important to him. It was real important to look at the National Tribal University. And I think of the National Tribal University as emblematic of his commitment that we would share resources and we would share the expertise and knowledge. Not every tribe can have a law school. Not every tribe could have a medical school or a business school, but through his vision, he saw that we could bring all of our resources together and do that together. And then I think the last thing I would say about his legacy that is just invaluable is that he felt that educated Native people, grounded in our traditions and our languages and our cultural knowledge, that we could make tribal government work for us. And sometimes he couched that in terms of reforming tribal government, but I always felt that what he was really asking us to do was make tribal government be who we are in a contemporary environment. So he had a great legacy, and I'm really thankful that I knew him and get to carry on that legacy with him.
That was Cheryl Crazy Bull reflecting on the legacy of the Sinte Gleska University President Lionel Bordeaux. When we come back, Mike Duncan tells us about the Native Dads Network. Years ago, Mike Duncan saw a need to help guide young Native fathers, so he started the Native Dads Network in Sacramento, California. Today, the group continues to help fathers and guide the next generation. Aaliyah Chavez has this interview.
Here's one testimonial from a father who explains how this network has helped him.
Hello, my name is Maurice.
My name is Joel.
We're Skeety and Pawnee in Muskogee Creek. And the fatherhood class has helped me in a lot of ways. It's taught me things that I didn't know that I needed to be a father. It has helped me in building relationships with, from friendships to relationships with his mother, with my son's mother, and with future relationships that I've had with my wife now, and relationships with my mother, my grandfather, and my stepfather. This program has really helped me a lot. And when I was a young man, I learned a lot of the wrong things, and I've been able to unlearn those things and start to build a new future for myself. And I really appreciate this program, and it's helped me along the way, and it's helped this guy. So thank you for everything.
Mike Duncan joins us today to tell us about some of the programs that they offer. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's a tough act to follow. That little boy was the cutest thing I've ever seen. But give us some more history on how you started this network.
Well, I'm just really excited to be here this morning. The vision began with Native Dads Network in 2010. I was doing like a fatherhood program. I was asked to do a fatherhood program at a TANF here in Sacramento. And I started realizing the importance of fatherhood, just by doing classes inside the group. Moving on from that job into my to Native Dads, creating the vision of Native Dads. I started going into the community and I started working with individuals, just on parenthood, being clean and sober, walking a good path, being present for their children, and also learning how to work with forgiveness in their life. A lot of times as men, because we've done wrong things in the past, and trying to, reconciliate, that kind of healing with your family is hard sometimes. So forgiveness became a big part of our work. But, just through the years, we developed this program into something really good. And that's one of our past participants. His name's Maurice. He's been a great individual and became a great father, a great example of what our program could do for our people.
Maybe talk about what some of the cultural components are to your programs.
Well, what we do, this in classes, we open up with prayer. Sometimes we open up with a song if a participant or myself would like to open up with a song, but we also open the doors for other things. We at the time we were doing weekly sweat lodge with the men, and also we would take trips to local ceremonies in this area, California, or to the Roundhouse, or other dams that were available for us to hear, for them to experience that as well. The other piece would be, again, we would also work with our hands. So we'd make bead necklaces, talk the importance of being in a good place. We would do that during graduation because it's a 12-week class. And the great thing about that is that our 12-week class, we have people that would graduate. And then we'd have a graduation ceremony where, like I said, where they make necklaces and things of that nature. And then they would return. We had people come for 3-4 years into our program, just repeat and just keep on going. And so it always was a great time. And we've had a lot of success stories in our program so far.
What programs have been the most popular?
Well, one of the things that we also do is we do a men's wellness gathering, and it's called Returning the Warrior Spirit. And that was something that, I'll just start here. Like when I was a young man, I never heard of anything of that, like the term fatherhood is sacred. I actually got a curriculum from an organization called Native American Fathers and Families Association. And that's where I first heard the term fatherhood is sacred. And so when we started doing this program, a lot of our men never heard that either. The importance of fatherhood, the importance of being a healthy man, the importance of being an example for the future generations. And so when we started saying, well, we never heard of a Native men's wellness gathering here in Northern California. So Buena Vista Rancheria, we have close ties with them in this area. And so they offered their reservation and their land to host this camping event for 3 days. And it was a success from the first one. We were in year 12 before the pandemic, and that became a very successful program. And so guys look forward to that every single year, and we found a lot of success in it.
Mike, I want to make sure that folks at home who are listening or watching this interview are able to take something away from it. If there's a Native dad who just needs a push to maybe look up programs like this in their area, or to take that first step of, as you said, forgiveness or reconciliation, what would be your advice to them?
I always like to think is that all of us have this inner child that needs to be healed. If you don't know what you don't know, how would you know? Right. And I'll just speak for myself. I'm a recovering everything, alcoholic, addiction, just that type of person, the lifestyle and everything. And I always like to use myself as an example that if I could do it, anybody else can do it. I just was disconnected from my children. I was disconnected from life, disconnected from culture, disconnected from just responsibility. And I had to do some things. I really had to work to get well and go back to school and do some things. But I think my point is I built everything that I teach today is I live by, and so we have to learn to love ourselves, know our worth. Like men have worth, and you have worth as well. And that's something that I had to learn through the years of recovery and in my healing journey through this red road. But if I had that advice, what I give in, don't give up on yourself. You're so important. You're so needed to this bigger picture of healing in our communities.
That was Mike Duncan of the Native Dads Network. A new book called The 7 Circles, Indigenous Teachings for Living Well, looks at the Indigenous perspective. One of its authors, Chelsey Luger, joined Aaliyah Chavez in the studio.
Tell us a little bit more about, what the book is and sort of preview it a little bit for us.
Well, it's called The 7 Circles, and it entails 7 different areas of life that we believe our ancestors really thrived in and retained unique teachings associated with. And of course, we've carried on those teachings and we've carried on those traditions despite any hardships or barriers that we've faced over the years. And to this day, Indigenous people have very unique ways of talking about wellness, and we have unique teachings associated with how to live a balanced life mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. So that's what our book is about.
You and your husband, of course, have been doing this work for some time. Has it always been in your plan to write a book, or maybe tell us about your process?
Yeah, absolutely not, because it's something that, you don't get to just, call up a publishing company and say, hey, I want to write a book. They kind of had to come to us. And so we were just thrilled from day one when we got signed with a literary agency, and then eventually when we decided to go with the company that we're with, Harper One, which is an imprint of HarperCollins, and we've just been overjoyed, and it's been a very surreal and exciting process all along the way.
I can imagine. And of course, maybe tell our viewers a little bit more about the ideas that are incorporated into this book. You already talked about it more, but if someone was picking this up, what can they expect to learn?
So they can learn about Indigenous worldview and how it relates and how it understands wellness and interprets the concept of wellness and living in balance in a different way from what you often see. In the Western world, everything is separated into different categories, and in the Indigenous world, we recognize the interconnection of mental, physical, spiritual, emotional well-being. And all of these areas overlap, and what we hope is that this is an inviting perspective that doesn't put people in a deficit mindset, but rather it makes people feel that they're welcome and they're already on their wellness journey, and give yourself credit for that. And let's see how we can continue to take it from there.
I want to talk about COVID-19, of course, because when we talk about health and wellness, I think that impacted us all so deeply. Maybe talk about, people who are feeling really bogged down or really just heavy right now coming out of COVID, what they can sort of take away from it at this time in particular.
Yeah. So certainly illness, COVID, any of these hardships that we face in life are a part of life. And we always say that in order to live in balance, you have to experience those moments where you are totally thrown off and out of balance and not feeling your best. And we accept that and embrace that as a part of the human experience. And we recognize that our teachings have brought us through so much. We have so much resiliency built within us. We have so much strength, and we can always return to that whenever we're ready.
Tell us what it was like to work with your husband on writing a book. Are you guys it looks like it on social media, you're the great team, but what was that like when you were down to the nuts and bolts?
Yeah, we have our little arguments here and there. Sometimes it's really hard because we have so many deadlines to meet and stuff like that. But for the most part, our work relationship has always been good because he's a photographer, I'm primarily the writer. And so he contributed these full color, gorgeous photos that you'll find all throughout the book. I think the photography is probably the best part of the book, in my opinion. So I really credit Thosh with that. He's been a photographer for decades. And so I kind of managed a lot of the writing aspect, though we both contributed, I contributed visually and he contributed writing as well. So it is a balance in the way that we work together. And I think that's why our relationship works and that's why our work works.
I want to talk about what the reaction has been to this book because it, of course, has been released, I think, a few weeks ago. So maybe tell us what you've heard from people who have read it.
Yeah, it came out on October 25th, and both the critical reviews and the sort of anecdotal reviews from readers have been so positive, so great. All of our book signing events have been totally sold out, standing room only. There's lots of bookstores around the country that are selling out of the book, and we're just thrilled. I mean, we feel so embraced by our community, and so we're really grateful and really proud to represent Indigenous community in this wellness space.
That was Chelsey Luger. Together with her husband, Thosh Collins, they co-authored the book, The 7 Circles, Indigenous Teachings for Living Well. And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives.
Sometimes you got to take a stand, just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.
The Sand Creek Massacre, the betrayal that changed Cheyenne and Arapaho people forever, focuses on tribal accounts of Colorado's deadliest day. Exhibition details at historycoloradocenter.org.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.